Hello and welcome. Beneath every great city, within every ancient forest, and along the borders of reality itself, something watches. Not with malice, not with hunger, but with purpose older than the gods themselves. These are not the heroes sung about in taverns, nor the villains cursed in prayers. They are the threshold keepers, the eternal sentinels, beings of such alien magnificence that mortal minds struggle to comprehend their true nature. You have walked past their influence countless times without knowing, felt their protection like a gentle pressure against the fabric of existence, and benefited from sacrifices made before your ancestors drew their first breath. The multiverse operates on principles far more complex than most mortals ever comprehend. Io, the overgod who oversees the Forgotten Realms, maintains creation not through direct intervention, but through careful balance. And he represents but one cosmic force among many that shape existence. For every power that seeks to create, another emerges to destroy. For every god that shapes reality, a counterforce threatens to unravel it. This is where the Eldritch guardians enter the grand design. Beings that exist in the spaces between, watching over thresholds that must never be crossed, sealing away horrors that must never wake, and maintaining balances that keep entire planes from collapsing into primordial chaos. They are the forgotten defenders, and their stories deserve to be remembered. When scholars speak of guardians in dungeons and dragons' lore, they typically reference dragons guarding hordes, knights protecting kingdoms, or clerics defending temples. But Eldritch guardians operate on a fundamentally different scale. These beings do not guard treasure or territory in any conventional sense. They guard concepts. They protect fundamental laws of reality. They maintain cosmic equilibrium itself. Some were created for this purpose by entities beyond divine comprehension. The primordials, those dawn titans made of manifest entropy and elemental energy, whose domains were the elemental chaos and a bear, forged some of the first protectors in the ages before history itself. Others volunteered, transforming themselves through ritual or sacrifice into something greater and more terrible than they once were. Still others simply existed since the dawn of time, woven into the fabric of creation as naturally as gravity or light. Consider for a moment the true meaning of the word Eldritch. It suggests something ancient and unknowable, something that exists outside normal categories of understanding. When you apply this concept to the idea of a guardian, you arrive at beings that protect in ways that defy conventional logic. Based on what we understand about planar mechanics and the nature of certain ancient creatures, we can infer that an Eldritch guardian might protect a place by ensuring no one ever finds it, warping space and time around its location, until it exists nowhere and everywhere simultaneously. Another might safeguard an artifact by becoming the artifact, merging consciousness with object until guardian and treasure are indistinguishable. Yet another could defend a realm by existing in multiple timelines at once, fighting threats before they ever manifest in the present. These are not beings that stand at gates with swords drawn. They are forces of nature given purpose, intelligence given form, time itself given consciousness, and the will to defend. Among the most ancient and enigmatic of all Eldritch guardians are the aboleths, creatures whose existence predates the gods themselves, and whose memories stretch back to the very beginning of creation. These aquatic aberrations, dwelling in lightless depths far beneath the surface world, possess characteristics that suggest they could serve as guardians of sealed far realm breaches and other cosmic threats. Though such roles would stem not from nobility or divine mandate, but from cold, calculated understanding of cosmic necessity. To comprehend why aboleths might position themselves as guardians, you must first understand what they are, what they remember, and what drives their alien intelligence. Aboleths appear as massive fish-like creatures, their bodies stretching 20 feet or more in length, covered in gray-green mucus that glistens wetly in whatever faint light penetrates their deep-water domains. 3 eyes arranged in a vertical line stare, with cold intelligence from faces that seem to shift and writhe even when perfectly still, as if their flesh cannot quite decide what shape it should hold. 4 long tentacles extend from their lower bodies, each one capable of striking with devastating force or releasing mucus that transforms the flesh of those it touches, coating victims in slime that allows the aboleth to breathe air, but makes breathing water impossible for the afflicted creature. But their physical form, horrifying though it may be, matters far less than what exists within their minds. Every aboleth is born with perfect racial memory, a psychic inheritance that includes not just the experiences of its parents, but the accumulated knowledge of its entire genetic line, stretching back to the species' origins. When an aboleth dies, other aboleths consume its brain, absorbing its memories and experiences into their own consciousness. This means that ancient aboleths carry within their minds the complete history of their race, remembering proto-worlds and incomprehensible dominions from the multiverse's earliest eons. They recall the primordial chaos before the gods arose, remember civilizations that rose and fell before the first elves walked Faerun, and possess knowledge of cosmic structures and planar arrangements that have long since been reorganized or destroyed. An aboleth does not learn history, it remembers history directly and personally, as if it lived through events that occurred millions of years before its physical body formed. This perfect memory could make aboleths uniquely qualified to serve as guardians of certain types of threats, specifically those that emerge from the far realm, or from the spaces between realities, where the fundamental laws of physics begin to break down. The far realm, that dimension of madness situated far from the planes of standard cosmology, represents a constant threat to stable reality. It is feared for its power to twist and corrupt, to transform coherent existence into impossible geometries and maddening contradictions. When the far realm presses against our reality, when barriers thin and breaches form, when alien intelligence from beyond begins seeping through into our dimension, someone must stand watch to prevent total catastrophe. Given their ancient knowledge and understanding of reality's deepest structures, it stands to reason that some aboleths might position themselves as such watchers. In the deepest waters beneath Faerun, in lightless seas that exist miles below the surface in caverns, so ancient they predate the current configuration of the continents, it is reasonable to assume that certain aboleths maintain vigils over sealed breaches in reality. These would not be breaches that can be permanently closed because they exist at fundamental weak points where the membrane between dimensions grows naturally thin. The breaches can be sealed, warded, and reinforced, but they would require constant monitoring because the pressure from the other side never ceases. The far realm does not actively seek to invade. It lacks the consciousness necessary for intention. But it exists in a state that naturally expands into any available space, the way water flows into cracks or gas fills a vacuum. Left unattended, these sealed breaches would gradually weaken and fail, allowing far realm energy to pour through into the Underdark's deepest waters, transforming them into zones of impossible reality that would spread upward like a plague of madness. The aboleths who might guard such breaches would not do so out of altruism or concern for surface dwellers. They care nothing for humanity, feel no kinship with elves or dwarves, and would gladly enslave any sentient creature foolish enough to enter their domains. But these ancient aberrations would understand, through their perfect racial memory and alien intelligence, that if the far realm breaches fully into the material plane, the resulting contamination will spread and intensify until it reaches even their deepest refuges. Reality itself will begin operating on far realm principles, and under those principles, even aboleths cannot maintain their existence. They would be unmade and reformed according to alien geometries, transformed into things that are no longer aboleths, no longer even comprehensible as individual entities. Their perfect memories would fragment and scatter across impossible dimensions. Their consciousness would dissolve into the howling madness of the far realm, and everything they are would cease in the most fundamental sense possible. So they guard, or so the logic would dictate. They would position themselves in the frigid darkness of primordial seas, their massive forms floating motionless for decades at a time. their 3 eyes fixed unblinking on the seals they maintain. They would extend their considerable psychic powers outward, creating mental barriers that reinforce the physical wards, using their psionic abilities to detect even the slightest fluctuation in the boundary's integrity. When they sense weakness developing, they would act immediately, channeling their psychic energy into the failing section, shore it up, reinforcing reality itself through sheer force of will and ancient understanding of how dimensions fit together. This would require constant attention and tremendous expenditure of mental energy, which is why such guardian aboleths would rarely move, rarely hunt, rarely do anything except maintain their endless vigil in the darkness. The price these aboleths would pay for such guardianship manifests primarily as isolation and stagnation. Aboleths are naturally ambitious creatures who seek to build empires, to enslave populations, to accumulate knowledge and power, and bend entire civilizations to their will. The aboleths who might choose or be chosen to serve as guardians must abandon these pursuits almost entirely. They cannot leave their posts to hunt for thralls or expand their influence, because even brief absences could allow the breaches to deteriorate beyond recovery. They cannot focus their considerable intellects on schemes and plots, because their mental energy must remain dedicated to maintaining the seals. They exist in a state of enforced passivity, aware of their own power, yet unable to exercise it for any purpose beyond the single task of keeping a door closed that must never open. The irony of aboleth guardianship, if such guardianship exists, is not lost on those few cosmic entities aware of it. These are creatures that enslave, that corrupt, that twist other beings into servitor races, and view all other life as tools to be used or obstacles to be eliminated. By any moral standard, aboleths are evil. Yet in any role as guardians of reality's boundaries, they would perform a service that benefits every living thing in existence. They would protect not because they are good, but because they are rational, because their perfect memory and vast intelligence allow them to calculate costs and benefits across cosmic timescales. They would recognize that some evils are so absolute that even other evils must unite against them, that preserving a reality where aboleths can be evil is preferable to allowing a transformation into something where evil and good lose all meaning. This would be guardianship reduced to its most essential function, stripped of nobility and sacrifice and heroism, until only the bare necessity remains. One being preventing others from experiencing something worse than the guardian itself represents. The surface dwellers who sleep peacefully in their beds, who build their civilizations and raise their children, and never know how close the far realm presses against the world's foundation, would benefit just as much from an aboleth's calculated vigilance as they would from an angel's blessed protection. The Aboleth would ask nothing from them, expect no gratitude, would enslave them without hesitation if they ever met, yet still stand between them and horrors that would unmake their minds and dissolve their reality into screaming chaos. In the silent darkness of primordial seas, if such guardian Aboleths exist, they float and watch and wait, their three eyes never closing, their ancient minds never resting, maintaining vigils that began before your race existed and will continue long after it has vanished into history. They remember everything, forget nothing, and understand with perfect clarity exactly what they prevent. They would be forgotten guardians in the most literal sense, protectors whose names will never be spoken with gratitude, whose deeds will never be celebrated, whose sacrifices will never be acknowledged. And they would prefer it that way, because anonymity is armor, obscurity is strength, and being forgotten is the price and privilege of guardians who watch over secrets too terrible for anyone else to know. Section 2. The unseen protector of the Sword Coast. Not all guardians dwell in lightless depths or exist as alien aberrations, whose minds operate on principles incomprehensible to mortal thought. Some guardians are noble, choosing their vigils not from calculated self-interest, but from genuine love for those they protect. Some sacrifice not just comfort or recognition, but the very essence of what defines their species, abandoning instincts bred into them over millennia to serve a higher purpose. Among the metallic dragons of Faerun, creatures already renowned for their wisdom and benevolence, one individual stands apart as perhaps the ultimate example of selfless guardianship. His name is Palarandusk, and though few have ever heard it spoken, his story illuminates what it truly means to protect from the shadows, to serve without acknowledgement, to love so deeply that glory itself becomes an acceptable sacrifice. Gold dragons are the most powerful and majestic of all metallic dragons, creatures of such magnificence that their very presence commands awe and reverence. They embody wisdom, justice, and divine purpose, often serving as agents of good-aligned deities, or positioning themselves as philosopher kings who rule over territories with benevolent authority. Gold dragons possess natural abilities that make them nearly unstoppable forces. They breathe fire with devastating effect, cast spells with the skill of accomplished wizards, and can assume animal or humanoid form at will to interact with lesser beings. More than any other dragon type, golds accumulate vast hoards of treasure, not out of simple greed, but as tangible representations of their power and achievements. For a gold dragon to abandon the pursuit of such a hoard, to turn away from the fundamental draconic drive to accumulate and display wealth, represents a sacrifice that cannot be overstated. Palarandusk was such a dragon, though his path to guardianship proved far more complex and painful than simple choice. He was ancient beyond most mortal comprehension, already mature when Nethril was young, having dwelt along the Sword Coast hunting wyverns and other prey in the days before that empire of wizards was even founded. But his early freedom did not last. The sorcerer Milerigath enslaved him, or forced him into servitude to avoid a worse fate. And Palarandusk spent centuries toiling in obedient obscurity. His longevity, and eventually his very nature and abilities, were altered by the many spells cast upon him by his master and Milerigath's apprentices, transforming him in ways that would shape his entire future. When Nethril fell, when that realm of increasingly decadent splendor collapsed in catastrophe, Palarandusk seized his freedom, along with what magic he could claim from the ruins, spellbooks in particular, snatched from the clutches of plundering Illithids and other fell foes. He set about using his augmented magical abilities in freedom for the first time in centuries. And during this period, he also collected philosophical human writings, spoke with elves and dwarves about their views of the world, and formed a personal code that would guide him for the rest of his existence. He had no desire to sleep on a bed of treasure or continuously covet more wealth, though he recognized the value of beauty and kept occasional statues or paintings, and understood that coinage served as a tool for bargaining or purchasing magic and aid. Palarandusk came to believe that any dragon has a duty to live in harmony with the land, devouring prey only as needful, despoiling things, only when ruination cannot be avoided, and protecting its domain against damage from floods, fires, and invasions. This philosophy drove him to become the Sun Dragon, the legendary protector of Neverwinter, where his exploits became the stuff of legend. He protected the city several times from orc hordes and invasions from the northern Moonshies, and he was seen as a benevolent protector, a heroic icon to whom some humans even prayed. But the passing years robbed the Sun Dragon of his strength and suppleness, as time robs all mortal things. Young dragons arrived to challenge him for his domain, with the frequency of vultures circling a stricken beast, and Palarandusk faced a terrible dilemma. With no fitting, trusted successor as defender of Neverwinter in sight, he dared not stand his ground and go down fighting, for that proud gesture would leave his chosen home undefended. He had to hide and devote his time to learning enough magic to survive, and he had to learn it fast. The Sun Dragon was seen less and less in Neverwinter, slipping into legend even before he truly vanished. Fear of the rising arcane brotherhood in Luskan, recognizing his magical nature, and using spells to enslave him, as Milerigath had once done, drove Palarandusk to disappear entirely. He adopted human form, used some of his treasure to purchase a half-ruined mansion in the countryside, not far south and east of Neverwinter, shut himself up in it, and set to work learning all the arcane spells he could. He was still there decades later when catastrophe struck. A band of adventurers who were either extremely fortunate in their choice of spells or who had been sent to destroy him by someone who knew his true nature, blasted the house to flaming embers around him. The attack came without warning, and it destroyed almost all of the Aging Gold Dragon's spellbooks. Palarandusk escaped destruction only by frantic use of his spells, but not before his body had been so ravaged by magic that it was held together only by a webwork of shattered magical power. Whelming all of his magic to save himself, the sun dragon rebuilt his own frame, forming the substanceless body of the slowly crumbling unseen protector he remains to this day. The transformation left Palarandusk in a state between states, neither fully corporeal nor truly incorporeal. He exists most of the time as a soundlessly levitating, semi-solid, invisible entity who can watch, listen, speak, and move about, but who cannot launch physical or magical attacks in this form. In this invisible form, he does not age. The spells that keep him whole do not deteriorate, and he suffers no harm from the elements. But when he needs to act, when threats demand his intervention, he can materialize into solid form, that of a male gold great worm whose eyes remain bright and alert, but whose jaws are white with age, and whose scales are pale and cracked from long use and failing vitality. In solid form, he can fight and cast spells upon others, but he dares materialize for only a few minutes each day, usually showing himself for only a few seconds at a time. After his transformation, Palarandusk decided that his lessened abilities made him unfit for his self-assigned post as defender of Neverwinter. The city in which he was now more legend than memory boasted half a dozen accomplished wizards and several resident bands of adventurers. It had decidedly less need for a draconic protector. Yet, as he toured much of the Sword Coast north as a restless wanderer, finding old friends and foes gone, and the land much changed, he discovered that his unease stemmed from having protection woven into his very nature. He could not be content except as a guardian, and this realization brought with it a sense of whimsy and gentle good nature as he searched for a new place to protect. He wanted somewhere close to centers of vibrant activity, yet remote and unknown. A locale inhabited by essentially honest folk, given more to hard work and living with the land than perfecting sorcery and dreaming of ruling other places. The gnomes of Earithimble, a little-known mining village nestled in a high, narrow valley called Felrendin, between 3 peaks of the westernmost Sword Mountains, not far from the high road southeast of Leylan, were perfect. Palarandusk used magic to draw several gnome elders out on their own, one after another, to reveal himself to them, offering to defend them if they would accept his presence. One by one, awed and touched, they agreed, and the long career of the unseen protector of Zar-eeal began. The philosophy behind Palarandusk's hidden guardianship runs deeper than simple humility. When a protector reveals themselves, they become a target, a challenge to be overcome, a prize to be claimed by those who measure worth through conquest. More importantly, visible guardians invite dependency. Communities that know they are protected may grow complacent, may abandon their own defenses, may cease developing the strength necessary to stand on their own. Hidden guardians allow those they protect to maintain agency, to believe in their own resilience, to develop the capabilities they will need when the guardian inevitably falls or moves on to other duties. This understanding drove every choice Palarandusk made in his role as protector. Down the years since taking up his vigil over Zar-eeal, Palarandusk has spent his days drifting from one gnome to another, like an anxious but silent, invisible sheepdog, trying to maintain an overall, ongoing picture of the whereabouts and doings of all the gnomes. He is attracted to family quarrels, feasts, and other occasions when the normally taciturn gnomes speak freely about their views, feelings, or aims, but otherwise tends to escort gnomes who are on the borders of Felrenden or traveling out of the valley to trade. He is swift to act when a gnome is threatened, but wise enough to value eavesdropping on enemy councils above making a show of materializing to strike first, or retaliating swiftly against a foe of the gnomes. His interventions have been decisive when necessary. He destroyed one orc horde before it could properly form, frustrating the plans of the cunning orc chieftain Rarog, whose scheme was to bring orc bands through the Underdark to assemble in the Sword Mountains and swoop down on Waterdeep by night. He has slain several human wizards, including Raediglar, the worm tamer of the cult of the dragon, and shattered an adventuring band called Korover's Raiders, who sought to establish a mining stronghold that could ally with the Zhentarim and give the Dark Network a defensible trading base on Waterdeep's doorstep. In each case, his interventions were decisive, but as invisible as possible, eliminating threats before they could grow into open warfare that might harm the gnomes he protects. Palarandusk regards the gnomes of his chosen village as his children. He has no need for sleep, no desire for a traditional lair, and finds the idea of prepared traps abhorrent. Though snatching up mountainside boulders to hurl during battle is acceptable because there is no premeditation unless the boulders have been deliberately collected beforehand. His unique nature leaves him neither desiring nor needing much food. He absorbs moisture when rains fall or by lying in the icy waters of the Felrenden, and he devours mountain rock, mine tailings, or foes of the gnomes when hunger seizes him, which is rare. The price Palarandusk pays for his guardianship manifests in ways both physical and spiritual. His body continues to deteriorate despite several magical augmentations he has purchased or traded other spells for. The spells that maintain his magically knit form are failing, and he grows weaker with each passing year. Most profoundly, he endures complete loneliness. He has no alliances with other dragons, is not known to have ever mated beyond his early mysterious days, and does not particularly welcome the presence or friendship of other worms. He is a true and contented loner, or so he tells himself, but one must wonder what centuries of such isolation do to even the most philosophical mind. The few folk who know of the unseen protector do not realize it is a dragon. Most believe it is a local guardian spirit, while others think it might be the invisible projection of a gnome wizard. The Forgebar dwarves, aggressive hill dwarves dwelling in caves on nearby Mount Galardrim, no better thrice their attacks on Erythimbul have led to near extermination under the spells and rending claws of a fierce gold dragon, whose scales are cracked and pale with age, and who weeps when he must slay, but slays nonetheless, without hesitation or mercy. This detail reveals perhaps more about Palarandusk's character than any other, that he weeps even as he kills, that necessity and mercy war within him, that he has maintained his compassion despite everything. Palarandusk's fate remains uncertain, although he could be overwhelmed if Felrendin ever became vitally important to the Arcane Brotherhood, or any alliance of 3 or more dragons. It seems more likely he will continue his vigil in obscurity for several more centuries before his body finally falls apart. Whether his magic will enable him to continue on as a disembodied sentience is unknown. But if it does, the protector deprived of any means of defending anything and fated only to watch could well go insane, and might then pose either a menace to all or be merely a powerless, unseen shadow. The lesson of Palarandusk is not one of glory or triumph, but of dedication and sacrifice elevated to their purest forms. He proved that the mightiest beings could choose humility, that power could be wielded most effectively through restraint, that the greatest love manifests not in grand gestures, but in quiet, constant dedication. The gnomes of Erythimbul do not build statues in his honor or compose songs celebrating his deeds, and that absence of recognition is exactly what Palarandusk desires. He protects them so thoroughly that they barely know they need protection, guides them so carefully that they believe themselves self-sufficient, loves them so completely that he asks nothing in return, not even acknowledgement. In an age of heroes who seek fame and dragons who demand tribute, Palarandusk stands as something rarer, a guardian who has made guardianship itself the entirety of his purpose, who has sacrificed not just comfort, but identity, not just treasure but recognition, not just freedom, but even the basic companionship that makes existence bearable. And he continues his watch, will continue for as long as his failing body permits, because he has made protection not just his duty, but his very essence. The one thing that gives meaning to an existence that might otherwise have ended centuries ago in a burning mansion south of Neverwinter. Section 3. The Lich Queen's Eternal Vigil. The astral plane stretches endlessly in all directions, a silvery void where thought becomes substance and distance loses meaning. Here, the corpses of dead gods drift through eternity, massive petrified forms that serve as grim monuments to divine mortality. This is the space between spaces, the pathway connecting the material plane to the outer planes, where deities maintain their domains, the medium through which souls travel to their afterlives, and through which divine power flows into mortal reality. It is a realm of pure potential, where the laws of physics bend and break, where time does not pass in any conventional sense, where a journey might take moments or millennia, depending on the traveler's will and focus. And floating within this impossible vastness are cities and fortresses built by a race that was forged in slavery, tempered through rebellion, and transformed into something that serves as both conqueror and guardian, raider and protector, depending on which face of their civilization you witness. The Githyanki are not gentle creatures, not benevolent watchers, not protectors who guard from altruistic love of those they defend. They are warriors and raiders who strike from their astral strongholds to pillage and conquer across the multiverse. They view most other races as inferior and pursue power with single-minded intensity that borders on religious fervor. Yet despite all this, despite their cruelty and their conquest, the Githyanki serve a function so vital to planar stability that it could be argued entire dimensions owe their continued security to these militant raiders. To understand this paradox, to comprehend how raiders might serve as inadvertent guardians and how hatred might provide protection, you must first understand where the Githyanki came from and what drives their eternal fury. Long ago, in an age before most current civilizations existed, a race of humanoids lived as slaves, not servants to cruel kings or subjects of conquering empires, but property of the mind flayers, those tentacle-faced aberrations whose very existence represents violation of natural law. The Illithids, as mind flayers are also known, built an empire that dominated multiple worlds, and they maintained this empire through absolute psychic domination of slave races. These humanoid slaves were valued for their adaptability, their potential for psionic development, and the particular sustenance their brains provided when the mind flayers fed. For generations beyond counting, they served the Illithids, their minds shackled by psychic chains more absolute than any physical bondage. their lives measured by their usefulness, until the day they were selected for consumption. But enslavement, no matter how complete, eventually breeds resistance. Among the humanoid slaves, individuals began to develop mental discipline strong enough to resist the mind flayer's psychic control. These resistors found each other, formed secret networks, and slowly, carefully, over generations of hidden preparation, they organized rebellion under the leadership of a warrior named Gith. The war that followed was terrible beyond description. A conflict fought as much in mental space as physical reality, where psychic screams echoed across dimensions and entire worlds burned in the struggle between enslaver and enslaved. The humanoid rebels could not win through superior strength or magic. The mind flayers possessed advantages in both areas that made direct confrontation suicide. Instead, they won through sheer determination, through willingness to sacrifice everything, through a fury so absolute that it transcended pain and fear, and even the survival instinct itself. When the war finally ended, when the last major mind flayer stronghold fell, and the slaves won their freedom, the victorious rebels discovered they could not return to what they had been. The conflict had changed them fundamentally, transforming them through a combination of the psychic evolution necessary to resist mind flayer domination and the spiritual scarring of generations spent enslaved. They took the name Githyanki, honoring their liberator Gith, though internal conflicts would eventually split them, with a faction breaking away to become the Githzerai. The Githyanki were no longer capable of settling back into peaceful civilization, no longer interested in anything except ensuring that what had been done to them would never happen again, and pursuing the complete extermination of all mind flayers across the multiverse. The Githyanki established their civilization in the astral plane for several strategic reasons. First, the astral plane exists outside normal time beings. They do not age, do not require food or water, do not experience the passage of years in any conventional sense. This meant the Githyanki could build their strength indefinitely, preparing for the eternal war against mind flayers without the limitations that plague material plane civilizations. Second, the astral plane provides access to all other planes through the proper portals and pathways, allowing the Githyanki to strike anywhere in the multiverse where Illithids might hide. Third, and perhaps most strategically important, claiming the astral plane as their home denied it to their enemies, preventing mind flayers from establishing their own strongholds in this vital location. The capital city of the Githyanki is Tunnerath, built atop and inside the husk of a six-armed god who has been dead for so long that its skin has calcified into hard stone. The city houses over 100,000 souls and is located somewhere deep in the astral plane. Its location a secret so well guarded that those who do know are too afraid to speak it. For the Githyanki will seek retribution against any who reveal it. While this city is largely home to the Githyanki, there is still a sizable population of other races who have been taken as slaves, as well as a population of red dragons with whom the Githyanki have formed ancient pacts, and even renegade Modrons who operate one of the only inns in the city. The city is largely crumbling, with plenty of abandoned homes for small groups to hide in from Githyanki patrols, though it can be dangerous in certain areas, as there are occasional shudders that rack the city, as if the god they live on is not quite dead yet. Ruling over the Githyanki is Vlaakith, the 157th, the terrible Lich Queen whose name is spoken with equal parts reverence and terror by her subjects. She is a deathless lich of nearly divine strength, who has used millennia to fashion Githyanki society around her image, imbuing in her Gith subjects a loyalty bordering on fanaticism. As a lich, Vlaakith possesses powers that surpass almost any living creature. She commands devastating magical abilities, wields psychic powers refined over vast stretches of time, and cannot be permanently killed as long as her phylactery endures. The location and nature of Vlaakith's phylactery remains one of the Githyanki's most closely guarded secrets, hidden somewhere in the astral planes, infinite expanse where no enemy could ever locate it. But more than her personal power, Vlaakith maintains control through a practice so terrible that it defines much of Githyanki culture. Being chosen by Vlaakith to ascend is presented as the ultimate reward for the conquest exacted by Githyanki warriors. In reality, however, this ascension is the utter absorption of the warrior's soul into Vlaakith's own life essence, providing the fuel that allows her to maintain undying life and divine power. Githyanki beyond a certain level of power are never encountered in the wider multiverse, with the understanding that their Lich Queen summons and consumes any that become a risk to her supremacy. This ensures that no Githyanki ever becomes strong enough to threaten her, while simultaneously feeding her ever-growing magical abilities. The Githyanki accept this practice as necessary, understanding that their queen's power protects their entire civilization even as it devours their greatest individuals. Now here is where the paradox of Githyanki guardianship emerges. These raiders, these conquerors, these servants of an undead tyrant who literally consumes her own people's souls, nonetheless serve a function that maintains crucial aspects of planar stability. Their eternal hatred of mind flayers, passed down through genetic memory and cultural tradition, means that no Illithid can establish any significant presence in or near the astral plane without facing immediate and overwhelming Githyanki response. From their city, the Githyanki continue to send ships out for their eternal crusade, which is to destroy all mind flayers. The moment a mind flayer attempts to establish a presence in the astral plane, Githyanki war parties detect and eliminate them with extreme prejudice. This vigilance, born entirely from hatred and the desire for revenge, inadvertently prevents a scenario that most material plane inhabitants never consider. Mind flayers reproduce through seromorphosis, a horrifying process where they implant tadpoles into humanoid hosts, gradually transforming the victim into a new illithid. If mind flayers could freely access the astral plane, where time does not flow normally, they could potentially establish breeding colonies there, accumulating power indefinitely while remaining protected from aging. From such bases, they could launch coordinated invasions of multiple material plane worlds simultaneously, overwhelming defenses through strategic advantage. Given enough time and access to the astral plane's unique properties, mind flayers could theoretically rebuild aspects of the slave empire they once commanded. This time, with the knowledge of how previous rebellions succeeded and the precautions necessary to prevent future uprisings. The Githyanki prevent this possibility through constant patrols and absolute intolerance for any illithid presence in their domain. They do not guard the astral plane because they care about protecting other races or maintaining cosmic balance. They guard it because it is theirs, claimed through blood and held through eternal vigilance, and they will annihilate anything that threatens their control or reminds them of their ancient enslavement. Their self-interested territorialism serves what could be considered a protective function for countless worlds whose inhabitants sleep peacefully, never knowing that militant raiders from the astral plane stand between them, and renewed incursions by mind flayer forces seeking to use the astral plane as a staging ground. The Githyanki war parties that patrol the astral plane are formidable beyond most mortal comprehension. These are not simple soldiers, but elite warriors trained from childhood in both martial and psychic combat, often riding red dragons that the Githyanki have formed ancient pacts with, wielding silver swords that can sever the silver cords connecting astral travelers to their physical bodies. A single Githyanki war party can eliminate threats that would require armies to defeat on the material plane, and numerous such parties constantly traverse the silver void, searching for enemies, establishing dominance, and ensuring that nothing challenges Githyanki supremacy. When these patrols encounter mind flayers, the resulting combat is absolute and merciless. The Githyanki take no prisoners, accept no surrenders, and show no mercy, because mercy implies the enemy has value beyond being destroyed. And to the Githyanki, mind flayers have no value whatsoever. They are vermin to be exterminated, aberrations whose very existence represents insult and threat. Every mind flayer death is celebrated. Every destroyed Illithid colony is victory. And the Githyanki pursue this war with intensity that will never diminish regardless of how many centuries pass or how many mind flayers die. This eternal hatred, this absolute refusal to allow any Illithid presence in the astral plane, inadvertently affects the planar pathways that countless souls used to reach their afterlives. When mortals die, their souls travel through the astral plane to reach the outer planes, where they will spend eternity in the realms of their gods. The Githyanki's domination of the astral plane and their constant patrols, while motivated by their own purposes, maintain a level of order in this vital transitional space. This could be viewed as a form of guardianship, though one born entirely from self-interest rather than any desire to protect others. The relationship between Vlaakith and her role as an inadvertent cosmic stabilizer proves particularly complex. She maintains her power through methods that any good-aligned being would consider evil. She rules through fear, consumes her own subjects' souls to fuel her magic, and leads a civilization built on raiding and conquest. Yet her strategic rule and absolute dedication to the destruction of mind flayers means she oversees operations that serve purposes beyond her own interests. Under her rule, the Githyanki have maintained dominance over the astral plane, prevented Illithid expansion through that realm, and created a situation where certain cosmic pathways remain secure due to Githyanki presence, even if that security is merely a side effect of their territorial control. This creates uncomfortable questions about the nature of guardianship, when those performing guardian-like functions are themselves morally questionable or outright evil. If Vlaakith were somehow defeated, if the Githyanki civilization collapsed, what would happen to the astral plane? Would mind flayers rush to fill the power vacuum, establishing the colonies and bases that the Githyanki currently prevent? Would other hostile forces claim territories that are currently secured by Githyanki presence? These questions have no certain answers, but they illuminate the reality that cosmic stability sometimes depends on beings and forces that would never be called heroes. That protection on multiversal scales sometimes emerges from self-interested actors whose personal goals happen to align with broader security. The Githyanki will continue their vigil as long as their civilization endures, as long as Vlaakith maintains her terrible reign, as long as the memory of slavery burns in their collective consciousness like an eternal flame that can never be extinguished. They are not guardians in any traditional sense, not protectors motivated by altruism or divine mandate. They are warriors who hate, conquerors who remember, former slaves who will never forgive and never forget. Yet in pursuing their own vengeance, in claiming and holding the astral plane as their domain, in hunting mind flayers with relentless fury, they perform functions that maintain certain aspects of planar stability. The multiverse benefits from their presence, whether they intend such benefit or not, whether they care about such consequences or not. In the silver void of the astral plane, they patrol and wait and hunt, ensuring that the nightmare of illithid domination remains in the past, that the chains they broke will never be reformed, that the freedom they won through blood and fury will endure forever. And reality, unknowing and uncaring, exists in a state shaped by their endless war. Section 4. When Guardians Fall. Every guardian, no matter how powerful or dedicated, exists in a state of eventual vulnerability. Time erodes all things. Corruption seeps into even the purest intentions. And the eternal vigilance required for true guardianship demands more than most beings can sustain across centuries or millennia. When a guardian fails, when the watcher abandons their post or falls to the very threats they were meant to contain, the consequences ripple outward in ways that can reshape entire regions or even planes of existence. These are not simple failures with localized effects. These are catastrophic unravelings where the absence of protection reveals just how necessary that protection was, where the fall of one being triggers cascades of disaster that confirm the terrible wisdom of why guardians were placed to begin with. The fallen guardians are rarely commemorated or remembered, their failures buried beneath the devastation those failures caused, their names struck from records by survivors who would rather forget than acknowledge how close protection brought them to the edge of annihilation. But their stories matter precisely because they illuminate what guardianship truly means, what happens when it ceases, and why some vigils must continue regardless of cost. To understand the necessity of guardians, you must first witness what occurs in their absence, must see the wreckage left behind when watchers close their eyes, must comprehend the darkness that floods in when even a single candle is extinguished. Among all the tales of fallen guardians, few prove as tragic or as instructive as the story of Zar-eeal. Once an angel of immense power and devotion, now the Archduchess of Avernus, ruler of the first layer of the 9 hells. Her fall from grace represents not a failure of character, but a corruption born from the very virtues that made her a worthy guardian in the first place: her devotion to protecting the innocent, her fury at injustice, her absolute refusal to stand idle while evil threatened those she loved. Understanding how such dedication transformed into damnation reveals uncomfortable truths about the limits of guardianship and the terrible prices that even the most noble protectors can pay. Zar-eeal began her existence as an angel of the 7 heavens, specifically serving as a warrior and champion dedicated to defending the innocent and striking down evil wherever it manifested. She was not merely powerful, but righteous in the truest sense, her every action driven by genuine love for mortal beings and absolute conviction in the necessity of protecting them from demonic corruption. When demonic forces threatened the material plane, when armies of Tannery demons poured forth from the abyss, seeking to corrupt and destroy, Zar-eeal stood at the forefront of celestial resistance, wielding her blade with skill that inspired mortal and angel alike. The moment that would eventually lead to her fall came when Zar-eeal witnessed the extent of demonic devastation on the material plane. She saw innocents slaughtered, cities burned, entire populations corrupted or enslaved by demonic forces. And she felt in her celestial heart that the traditional methods of fighting demons were insufficient. The demons attacked, angels responded, demons were driven back, and then the cycle repeated. Endless warfare that allowed demons to cause tremendous suffering before celestial forces could intervene. Zar-eeal came to believe that this defensive posture was morally unacceptable, that true protection required taking the fight directly to the demons in their own realm, striking at the heart of the abyss itself to end the threat at its source. She gathered followers to her cause, both angels who shared her frustration with defensive warfare and mortal warriors who were inspired by her vision and zeal. Together, they prepared for a crusade unlike any the celestial hosts had attempted before, a direct invasion of Avernus, the first layer of the 9 hells, where demons and devils fought their eternal blood war. Zar-eeal's plan was to strike at the demons while they were engaged with devils, to tip the balance of that eternal conflict in ways that would prevent demonic forces from threatening the material plane. It was a bold strategy, perhaps even a brilliant one, driven by the purest of intentions and the most noble of goals. And it was catastrophically naive about the nature of the forces she would face. The crusade launched with initial success. Zar-eeal and her army descended into Avernus like a tide of radiant fury, their righteous wrath cutting through demonic forces with devastating efficiency. For a time, it seemed the impossible might be achieved, that celestial might combined with mortal determination could truly make a difference in the blood war itself. But Avernus is not simply a battlefield. It is a realm of corruption, a place where the very environment works to twist and degrade all that is good and pure. The ground itself exudes malevolent energy. The air carries whispers of temptation, and every moment spent there exposes the soul to influences that erode virtue like acid eating through metal. Zar-eeal's army began to falter not through defeat in battle, but through the slow corruption of being in Avernus itself. Mortal warriors found their noble motivations questioned by insidious doubts. Angels discovered that their righteous fury was beginning to feel uncomfortably similar to the rage that drove demons. And Zar-eeal herself, leading from the front, absorbing the worst of what Avernus offered, began to change in ways she did not immediately recognize. Her dedication to protecting mortals remained, but it was becoming twisted, transforming from love into possession, from protection into the belief that she alone knew what was best, that mortal-free will was less important than mortal safety. The final catastrophe came when Zar-eeal's army was overwhelmed not by demons, but by the devils whose territory she had invaded. Asmodeus, the ruler of all 9 hells, and a being of cunning that exceeded even Zar-eeal's considerable intelligence, had been watching the crusade with great interest. He recognized in Zar-eeal something valuable, a warrior of immense power and skill, a leader capable of inspiring absolute devotion, and most importantly, a being whose righteous fury could be redirected to serve his purposes. When the devils attacked Zar-eeal's army in force, they did not simply seek to destroy, but to isolate, to separate Zar-eeal from her followers, to create the conditions necessary for her complete fall. The battle was a massacre. Zar-eeal's mortal followers died by the thousands. Her angelic companions fell or fled, and Zar-eeal herself fought with such fury that she created a mountain of slaughtered enemies, even as she was overwhelmed by sheer numbers. When she finally fell, badly wounded and on the verge of death, Asmodeus made his move. He had her recovered from the battlefield, brought to the depths of Nessus, and allowed to heal in an environment saturated with infernal corruption. During this recovery, isolated from celestial influence, surrounded by the concentrated evil of the deepest hell, Zar-eeal underwent her final transformation. Asmodeus offered her a choice that was not really a choice at all. She could return to the celestial realms in failure and shame, her crusade a disaster, her followers dead, her righteousness questioned by those who had warned against such hubris. Or she could remain in the hells, accept rulership of Avernus, and continue her war against demons with legions of devils under her command, with resources and power beyond anything the celestial hosts had granted her. She could achieve what she had always wanted, to truly make a difference in the blood war, to protect the material plane by destroying demons at their source, but only by embracing damnation and serving the archdevil who represented everything she once opposed. Zar-eeal accepted. The corruption that had been building throughout her time in Avernus, the changes to her thinking that had occurred so gradually, she barely noticed them. The isolation and trauma of her army's destruction. All of these factors culminated in a decision that completed her fall. She swore fealty to Asmodeus, accepted rulership of Avernus, and became what she had once fought against, a devil, an archdevil specifically, the Archduchess of the first layer of hell. The transformation was not merely spiritual, but physical. Her angelic form twisted and corrupted, her wings becoming leathery and bat-like, her celestial radiance replaced with infernal flames. She lost a hand in the final battle, which was replaced with a weapon-like appendage wreathed in hellfire. Most tragically, she retained her essential purpose. She still wages war against demons, still dedicates herself to fighting the blood war, still commands armies with brilliant tactical skill. But now, she does so as a devil, serving Asmodeus's purposes. Her original goal of protecting the material plane subordinated to the infernal hierarchy's true aims of accumulating souls and expanding hell's influence. The consequences of Zar-eeal's fall rippled across multiple planes. The mortal warriors who followed her and survived became, corrupted themselves, or returned home bearing trauma that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The angels who participated in the crusade either fell alongside her or returned to the celestial realms, bearing the shame of association with such a catastrophic failure. The celestial hosts became more cautious about direct intervention, more hesitant to take bold action against demonic threats, creating a gap in protection that demons have exploited repeatedly. And Avernus gained a ruler of terrifying competence, an archdevil who understands celestial tactics intimately and uses that knowledge to make the first layer of hell more dangerous than it has ever been. Perhaps most unsettling is that Zar-eeal herself does not seem to fully recognize her fall. From her perspective, she continues to serve the cause she always championed. She fights demons, protects against infernal corruption spreading to other planes, and maintains order through strength. That she does so now as a devil, that her methods involve corrupting and enslaving mortal souls, that she serves a hierarchy dedicated to ultimate evil. These facts have been rationalized in her corrupted consciousness as necessary compromises for the greater good. She represents the ultimate corruption of a guardian, one who retained all her power and dedication while losing the moral foundation that made those qualities virtuous rather than monstrous. The tragedy of Zar-eeal illuminates several critical truths about guardian failures. First, that good intentions do not protect against corruption when one operates in environments designed to corrupt. Zar-eeal's righteousness made her a valuable target for demonic and devilish corruption, precisely because corrupting something so purely good created a prize of immense value. Second, that isolation from sources of virtue accelerates moral decay. When Zar-eeal was separated from her celestial support structure, surrounded only by infernal influence, her ability to maintain her moral center collapsed despite her tremendous willpower. Third, and perhaps most importantly, that some guardians fail not through weakness, but through an excess of the very strengths that made them effective guardians. Zar-eeal's absolute dedication to protecting the innocent, her refusal to accept gradual approaches, her conviction that she knew the right course, These virtues became the mechanism of her corruption when twisted by the right circumstances. The pattern of guardian corruption repeats in different forms throughout the planes, though few examples prove as dramatic or well documented as Zar-eeal's fall. Based on what we understand about corruption mechanics and guardian vulnerabilities, we can infer similar catastrophes occurring in less visible contexts. A treant guardian of an ancient grove might spend millennia protecting against necromantic corruption, only to finally succumb after centuries of exposure to the very energies it fights, transforming into a creature that spreads the undeath it once prevented. A quaddle watching over a sealed demon prison might be slowly influenced by the very demon it guards, its perfect dedication making it vulnerable to corruption, precisely because it never considers the possibility that it could be compromised. An ancient dragon guarding an artifact of tremendous evil might convince itself that studying the artifact to better understand it is necessary for effective guardianship, not recognizing until too late that such study is itself the mechanism of its corruption. These corrupted guardians represent perhaps the most dangerous form of guardian failure, because they bring all their knowledge of defenses and weaknesses to bear in service of what they once fought against. A corrupted guardian knows exactly how the protections work because they designed or maintained them. They understand the vulnerabilities because they spent centuries thinking about how to prevent them from being exploited. When such a guardian turns, when protection becomes threat, the resulting catastrophe often exceeds what would have occurred if the guardian had simply abandoned their post. This creates a terrible calculus where those who oversee guardians must sometimes consider whether the risk of corruption outweighs the benefit of having a guardian at all. Whether some vigils are so dangerous to the watchers that leaving positions unguarded might actually be safer than staffing them. The lesson of fallen guardians is not that guardianship should be abandoned, or that dedication is dangerous. Rather, it is that eternal vigilance requires more than individual strength, that even the mightiest beings need support systems and relief, that isolation is itself a form of corruption more dangerous than any external enemy. The guardians who endure are those who maintain connections, who accept that they cannot shoulder their burdens alone, who recognize their own vulnerabilities and build protections against corruption as carefully as they build protections against external threats. And even then, even with all possible precautions, some guardians will fall, because the nature of guardianship is to stand between the world and threats so terrible that mere exposure to them exacts costs that eventually exceed what any being can pay. Section 5. The eternal vigil continues. Despite the failures, despite the corruptions and the falls, and the terrible consequences when guardians abandon their posts, the vigils continue. Across the material plane and beyond, beings still maintain their watches, still sacrifice their freedom and comfort, and sometimes their very identities to protect what must be protected. These ongoing guardians represent hope in its most fundamental form, the proof that dedication can endure, that purpose can transcend suffering, that some beings will continue to serve regardless of cost. Among these eternal watchers, few exemplify the purity of guardianship more completely than the Quaddles, those celestial serpents whose very existence is defined by protection, whose divine purpose manifests as patient, endless vigilance over the secrets and powers that must be kept from those who would misuse them. Quaddles were created directly by good-aligned deities, brought into existence for the specific purpose of guardianship. They were not mortals who chose protection or creatures that evolved into guardian roles, but beings forged from divine essence with guardianship woven into their fundamental nature, the way flight is woven into birds or swimming into fish. A Quaddle does not decide to guard, it guards, because guarding is what it is, the essential expression of its being, as natural and inevitable as a river flowing downhill or flames rising upward. This divine origin gives Quaddles certain advantages over other guardians, specifically a resistance to the corruption and exhaustion that dooms so many others. Though they still experience isolation and sacrifice in uniquely profound ways, precisely because they cannot abandon their duties even when suffering becomes overwhelming. The physical form of a Quaddle reflects its celestial nature and purpose. The body is that of a great serpent, muscles rippling beneath scales that shimmer with colors that seem to shift depending on the angle of viewing, sometimes appearing green and gold, other times blue and silver, always beautiful in ways that mortal craft cannot replicate. From the serpent's back extend enormous feathered wings, each feather a masterwork of natural artistry, creating a wingspan that can stretch 20 feet or more when fully extended. The head combines serpentine and avian features, with intelligent eyes that perceive far more than simple visible light, capable of seeing into the ethereal plane, detecting magic, and most importantly, reading the moral alignment and true intentions of any creature the Quaddle observes. This ability to perceive alignment and intention distinguishes Quaddle guardianship from other forms of protection, where sphinxes test through riddles and intellectual challenges, where dragons might judge based on courage or tribute. Quaddles assess worthiness through direct perception of the supplicant's soul. When you approach something a Quaddle guards, it sees not just your actions, but your motivations, not just your words, but your character, not just what you claim to want, but what you truly intend. This makes lying to a Quaddle effectively impossible, and deception utterly futile. The The Quaddle knows you in ways you might not fully know yourself, perceiving the goodness or corruption in your heart with perfect clarity. For those who approach with pure intentions and genuine need, Quaddles can be surprisingly helpful despite their role as guardians. A Quaddle guarding an ancient library might permit a scholar seeking knowledge for benevolent purposes to enter and study, might even assist in locating specific texts or explaining obscure passages. The Quaddle understands that what it guards is not meant to be hidden forever from everyone, but rather protected from those who would misuse it. Knowledge in the hands of the wise serves good. The same knowledge in the hands of the corrupt becomes a weapon. The Quaddle's ability to distinguish between these categories means it can allow access selectively, serving as both guardian and gatekeeper, both protector and guide. But for those who approach with evil intent or corrupt purposes, Quaddles become implacable opponents despite their celestial beauty. They possess powerful, innate magical abilities, including the capacity to cast numerous spells without need for material components or verbal incantations. They can create barriers of force, turn invisible, detect thoughts, and perhaps most devastatingly, they can cast spells that affect the mind directly, holding persons in place, suggesting actions, or even dominating the will of those who threaten what they protect. Their bite delivers venom so potent that it can render even powerful warriors unconscious within moments. A mercy compared to what they could do, but effective at removing threats without permanent harm. The Quaddles also possess the ability to change shape, assuming humanoid or beast forms at will. This allows them to observe potential threats without revealing themselves, to walk among mortals gathering information about who approaches their charge and why, to test supplicants before revealing their true nature. Based on what we know of their abilities and purpose, it is reasonable to assume that a wandering priest who appears near an ancient temple ruin might actually be the Quaddle guardian observing adventurers who camp nearby. Assessing their character through conversation before deciding whether to reveal the temple's location or use magic to lead them astray. This shape-changing serves both defensive and educational purposes. The Quaddle can turn away those unworthy without revealing what they failed to find, and can guide the worthy without immediately overwhelming them with celestial presence. Across Faerun and beyond, Quaddles maintain vigils over locations of tremendous significance, usually sites connected to ancient civilizations or powerful magical traditions. In the jungles of Chult, it stands to reason that Quaddles guard buried temples dedicated to gods whose worship has faded, but whose divine power remains locked in sacred artifacts. These temples would contain not treasures in the conventional sense, but rather focal points of divine energy, places where the boundaries between mortal and divine grow thin, where proper rituals could channel God power for purposes both wondrous and terrible. The Quaddles would ensure that only those with genuine divine calling and pure purpose can access these sites, turning away treasure hunters while permitting true priests to conduct their ceremonies. In ruins scattered throughout the world, in places where ancient magical traditions left behind knowledge too dangerous for most contemporary practitioners, we can infer that Quaddles watch over magical laboratories and libraries that contain spells of tremendous power and risk. These would not be simply powerful spells, but reality warping magic that becomes exponentially more hazardous in the hands of lesser practitioners. A Quaddle guarding such a site might permit a sufficiently skilled and morally grounded wizard to study these ancient spells, but only under strict supervision and with constant monitoring to ensure the knowledge gained does not corrupt or overwhelm the student. The patience Quaddles demonstrate exceeds mortal comprehension. They are functionally immortal, aging so slowly that a Quaddle born during humanity's earliest civilizations might still appear in the prime of life today. This means their vigils operate on timescales that make mortal concepts of dedication seem laughably brief. A Quaddle might guard a sealed tomb for 500 years without a single visitor, without a single moment of danger, spending half a millennium watching over something that no one attempts to access. Then, in the space of a single day, everything the Quaddle has guarded against finally manifests. A dark cult discovers the tomb's location, attempts to break the seals, seeks to unleash what lies within. The Quaddle responds with all the power and purpose it has maintained across those 5 centuries, eliminating the threat, then settling back into patient watching for another 500 years, if necessary. When adventurers encounter Quaddle guardians, the interaction often proves more complex than simple combat or negotiation. Adventurers, particularly those who see themselves as heroes, operate under assumptions about what constitutes legitimate adventure and acceptable goals. Exploring ancient ruins, claiming treasures from abandoned dungeons, defeating monsters that threaten communities, these activities seem straightforwardly heroic from the adventurer's perspective. But from a Quaddle guardian's viewpoint, these same adventurers might be threats, intruders attempting to access or take what must remain protected. The adventurer seeking to claim a powerful artifact to use against evil does not understand that the artifact might corrupt its wielder regardless of their initial intentions. The wizard hoping to study ancient spells to become powerful enough to defend his homeland does not realize that those spells might drive him mad and transform him into exactly the kind of threat he hoped to prevent. This creates genuine moral complexity where both sides act according to their understanding of good. Yet conflict becomes inevitable. The Quaddle refuses access not from cruelty or arbitrary rule, but from direct perception that the adventurer, despite good intentions, will ultimately cause harm. The adventurer, unable to perceive what the quaddle sees, and operating on the reasonable belief that their intentions should matter, views the quaddle as an obstacle rather than a protector. Combat might follow, and if the adventurers are sufficiently powerful, they might even defeat the quaddle, breaching the guardian's protection to claim what they sought. In such cases, the tragic irony could manifest when the adventurers discover, often too late, that the quaddle was correct in its assessment, that the power they claimed does indeed corrupt or destroy them, that the guardian they defeated was protecting them from themselves as much as protecting the world from them. The cyclical nature of cosmic protection manifests clearly in how new guardians emerge to replace fallen ones. When a quaddle dies in defense of its charge, when the vigil finally ends through defeat or sacrifice, the creating deity does not simply abandon the post. Based on what we understand of divine behavior and the nature of guardian duties, it is reasonable to assume that a new quaddle would be formed and dispatched, taking up the watch where its predecessor fell, continuing the eternal protection with fresh dedication, but inheriting the same sacred duty. This would create an unbroken chain of guardianship stretching across millennia, individual quaddles rising and falling, while the vigil itself continues without interruption. The new guardian might inherit memories or knowledge from those who came before through divine magic, allowing the transfer of critical information, while sparing the new quaddle the accumulated weariness of centuries. The future of Eldritch guardianship remains uncertain in ways that should concern those who understand the stakes. As the planes grow more interconnected, as planar travel becomes more accessible, as mortals develop ever more powerful magic and technology, the threats guardians must contain grow correspondingly more sophisticated and dangerous. Simultaneously, the pool of beings willing to accept guardian roles diminishes as knowledge of guardian failures spreads, and the costs of such service become more widely understood. The balance between threats requiring containment and guardians available to contain them grows more precarious with each passing century, approaching a tipping point where the system might finally fail catastrophically. Yet as long as beings like the quaddles exist, as long as divine purpose continues to manifest in creatures literally created to protect, hope remains. The eternal vigil continues not because it is easy or pleasant or rewarding in any conventional sense, but because it must. Because some doors require eternal watching, some secrets demand permanent keeping, some powers necessitate constant containment. The guardians who maintain these vigils, whether celestial serpents or ancient aberrations or hidden dragons, form the invisible foundation supporting a reality that most inhabitants never realize requires support. They are forgotten by design, unknown by necessity, and unacknowledged by cosmic preference. And they continue their watches regardless, will continue for as long as reality requires protection, for as long as threats exist that only guardians can contain. So when you walk through ancient forests, or descend into forgotten ruins, or explore the boundaries between planes, remember that you move through watched spaces, that eyes you cannot perceive follow your progress, that guardians evaluate your every action against standards you might not understand. Some of those guardians wish you well and will help if you prove worthy. Others care nothing for your welfare, but protect you anyway as collateral benefit of their true purposes. And a few watch specifically because you represent the threat they were placed to contain. And they wait patiently for the moment when your intentions reveal whether you deserve to proceed or must be stopped. The forgotten guardians remember everything, forget nothing, and maintain their eternal vigils in the spaces between your awareness and your safety. The invisible defenders of a reality that depends on their sacrifice more than it could ever know. From Palarandusk slowly fading into nothingness while still watching over his gnomes, to the Aboleths floating in lightless seas preventing far realm breaches, to the Githyanki hunting mind flares through the silver void, to the Quaddles maintaining patient watch over ancient secrets, these guardians continue. They endure isolation and corruption, face threats that would shatter lesser beings, sacrifice everything including recognition itself. And they do so knowing that the worlds they protect will never know their names, never sing their praises, never understand what stands between them and annihilation. This is the lore of the Forgotten Guardians, the story of those who watch while others sleep, who protect while others live unaware, who sacrifice while others prosper. They are the Eldritch beings protecting ancient realms, and they will continue their vigils long after we have all passed into memory, maintaining watches that began before history and will continue beyond its ending. Their story is not one of glory, but of purpose, not of recognition, but of service, not of triumph, but of endless, patient, solitary dedication to a duty that will never be complete and can never be abandoned. If you have enjoyed this deep exploration into the lore of Dungeons and Dragons' most mysterious and dedicated protectors, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. There are countless more stories waiting to be told, endless depths of lore to explore together. And I look forward to sharing that journey with you. Until next time, may your own vigils be worthwhile, your sacrifices meaningful, and your dedication remembered, even if only by yourself.